Greetings and shalom to my brothers and sisters of Master Yeshua the Messiah who have his testimony and guard his commandments. Brother Nick here, and today is the 25th day of the 12th month on Yahweh Elohim's solar calibrated non-Gregorian 364-day calendar. It is March 12th, 2024. That's the Gregorian equivalent. I'm on the island of Cyprus, and this video is about identifying the 2024 Spring Equinox and the international date line. So in my video that I put out about 4 days ago, if you haven't watched this video, you need to watch this video. It's not just downloading the 364-day solar calibrated non-Gregorian calendar, but in this video there's so much information about where David hid the key to understand the calendar, and that is in Psalm chapter 19 verses 4 through 6. Also in this I debunk parts of the Book of the Heavenly Luminaries, so you need to watch this video, which does not affect the 364-day calendar. And lastly, I totally debunk the lunar Sabbath and the Sabbath calendars that Philo recorded, as they are the Gregorian Saturday, the Gregorian days of the week that you have now are false. So if you haven't watched this video, you need to watch it. Don't just download the calendar, watch the entire video. In this video, I received a comment from a dear brother, Brother Richard Meehan. So thanks, Brother Richard. And he asked me about why I chose March 20th, for the equinox day for Jerusalem and not March 19th. And he left me this information regarding the equinox data. Sunrise on March 20th, he says it's 89 degrees azimuth. But on the March 19th, it's 90 degrees azimuth. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the NASA data. My reply to Richard was, great question. I will make a follow-up video to explain the NASA equinox moment and why I am projecting the dates that I am. Again, they're projections. In this video, I also talk about the international date line, and the Americas might be on the 20th as well. So what I'm saying is, instead of the international date line being here for this year, the international date line might move where it's right here for this year, which means the whole Earth is going to, if this is the beginning of the day and the beginning of the real international date line, that means the entire Earth might be getting March 20th as the day of the spring equinox. I'll be going over the data for this in this video. So again, Americas, you might be getting it on March 20th. This is why you have to be aware of an actual equinox test. Once we get the 4-year pattern of the equinox, then you're fine. But right now, we just need to verify this for the Americas. And it might be Eastern Australia and New Zealand that are behind. That's a big question, so we might not get all of these answered. So, guys, watch this video that you're watching now. You need to watch this video and understand it for yourself so you can identify your own day of the spring equinox to your local regional time. Now, I did mention NASA, and NASA is a buzzword because they lie. NASA has tons of lies regarding the heliocentric universe, and they lie about that, and they also lie about the shape of the Earth, all the fake bogus moon landings, and also the live broadcasts that they do from the ISS station. But NASA does publish very accurate and trustworthy data of the movements of the sun, moon, and the moving stars. So here is just a screenshot of time and date of when the eclipses are going to happen. And all the eclipse data, it's accurate. People have been visualizing the data and verifying that NASA data for regarding the time and date of the eclipses is correct. Time and date uses data from NASA JPL API. So again, here is information about the lunar cycle coming up in September 2024, and it's going to be accurate, all right? And this is a page on time and date regarding the sunrise and sunset for March 2024. I'll be using a couple of these right here for this video right now. Okay, so this is time and date for Jerusalem of the sunrise and sunset March 2024. This is what Richard Meehan was asking about, why I picked March 20th, not March 19th. Because in March 19th, it says the sun is going to rise 90 degrees azimuth. And March 20th, it says it's going to rise 89 degrees azimuth. We got to look at where the sun is in the NASA data. What are they defining as rising 89 degrees azimuth? And also something else to notice, that there's no decimal points to these, okay? So it doesn't say 90.2 or 89.7 or 89.8 or 89.85 if you want to get 2 decimal places over. And also for time and date for Jerusalem, it says that the March equinox, the vernal equinox in Jerusalem, is at 5:06 a.m. on Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. Now, that's one of the reasons why I'm going to share with you why, even though it says 89 degrees, well, we're going to understand what NASA, we're going to have a better understanding of the NASA data that they're putting out, which is actually pretty accurate. So here is Stellarium, and Stellarium uses NASA and JPL's API data for their model that they put out. And Stellarium, so this is set to the location of Jerusalem. Here I have the azimuthal grid right here. These lines left to right and top to bottom are the azimuthal grid. Okay, right here you can see this is 90 degrees. I'll explain that later. And then also this faint red line is a celestial equator. And then important to note that I have the dates here, March 19th, 2024, March 20th, 2024, and March 21st, 2024. This is the east. The sun rises in the east here in the northern hemisphere, rises in the east in the northern, here it's in the east, and the sun is setting in the west. So that's what I have for these graphics. Now for these graphics, I put in the blue to overlap the 90 degrees azimuth. This is due east, 90 degrees azimuth, 90.00 degrees. Right next to one, this line going top to bottom right here is 90.2 degrees azimuth. All right, this line over here is 90.4 degrees azimuth. This one over here is 89.4 degrees azimuth. This over here is 89.2 degrees azimuth. So there's a difference of fractions right here in between. But this 90.00 degrees azimuth is what is called due east. And as you can see, there's an E there. So it's going from top to bottom over that E. That's how I did this. Because you probably couldn't see the celestial equator, because it's a faint red line, I put a red line on top of it, and you can see now the celestial equator. So please notice that for March 20th, 2024, not only is it intersected by 90 degrees azimuth, sun on the horizon, intersected by 90 degrees azimuth, but it is also intersected by the celestial equator. But the celestial equator is not intersecting the sun on March 21st or intersecting the sun on March 19th. The celestial equator is only intersecting the sun at sunrise on March 20th. In my video from almost 3 years ago, I discussed the azimuthal equinox for Jerusalem when the sun is fully risen and on the horizon, just like you see here. It's fully risen on the horizon and intersected, not bisected, equally cut in half. So the sun is not cut in half by this 90 degrees azimuth. It's just intersected by 90 degrees azimuth. And that's what I shared was likely the sign of the spring equinox. But it's also the celestial equator that is intersecting the sun. Again, I shared with you guys already at the beginning of this video for several years, and most importantly in my last video, this one, if you haven't watched it, watch it, that in Psalm 19 verse 4 to 6, King David hid the secret understanding of how to calibrate the 364-day calendar year in Psalm 19, 4 to 6. Okay, in my last video, I re-emphasized this teaching that I've shared with you guys from several years ago, and this is so important that you understand, okay, because you don't need the book of Enoch, Heavenly Luminaries, which fails several parts of the sun's movement. So watch this video if you haven't seen it. So here's Psalm 19, as I shared, okay, the tabernacle door of Moses, the door of the tabernacle of Moses was aligned due east. The temple door was also aligned due east, and the tent of David was aligned due east. That means that the sun would shine into those locations, into those structures on the day of the spring equinox. All right? So Psalm 19, 1-6, to the chief musician, a psalm of David. This is a prophecy to the chief musician. Okay, the chief musician is a future person. The heavens declare the glory of Elohim, and the firmament, the dome, showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line, which is the ecliptic Mazzaroth, is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. That's talking about all of the stars, the ecliptic Mazzaroth. All right. In them, in the Mazzaroth, has he set a tabernacle, the spring equinox, for the sun. Okay, because he set a tabernacle. There's no tabernacle constellation. But what happens is that the ecliptic line and the celestial equator, the line of the celestial equator, they intersect and make an X, which is also a Paleo-Hebrew Tav, which is the mark, which is the sign, which is an oath. This is March 14th, 2024. You can see the celestial equator. You can see the ecliptic line right here. The sun travels upon the ecliptic line. And then on the spring equinox, the sun is going to be where the sun intersects, where the ecliptic and the equator intersect is where the equinox is going to be. And this is the day of the spring equinox, March 20th, 2024. And as you can see, the sun is right here at the intersection between the celestial equator and the ecliptic. And this is zoomed in on March 20th, 2024 from Jerusalem at 5:06 a.m. And this is when NASA's equinox moment is when the sun is bisected into two equal pieces by the celestial equator. So the sun travels along the ecliptic, and when the sun is bisected in half into two equal pieces, half on this side, half on that side, that is the quote-unquote equinox moment that you'll see like in timeanddate.com. And make an X, the Paleo letter Tav, which is the sign. Okay, that's the great sign on the earth. Per Jubilees 2 verse 9. And brothers and sisters, remember in my last video, I went over the Ezekiel 8 and the idolatry in the temple. And then I explained how the priests right here, the greatest sin that they had was that they had the 25 men, which should have been the 24 priestly families and the high priest family. They had their back toward the temple and they were worshiping the rising sun. That could only be done on the spring equinox or the fall equinox. But the fall equinox is not that important in paganism. So likely it was the spring equinox, considering the way the gates of the temple were set up. Because of the distance between the door, the steps of the temple, and the altar. So the 25 men had their backs toward the temple right here, and they were between the porch and the altar, and they were worshiping the rising sun. So to be worshiping the rising sun out of Solomon and David's temple, they would have been right here. They would have had to look through here and through this door, this gate, to worship the rising sun. So that would have been could have been done and get that vantage point likely on the day of the spring equinox. It had to go through two gates right here. They had to look through two gates. So it could only have been on the spring equinox they were doing it, and that's when the judgment comes on the abominations of the house of Judah. And what's interesting is in the next chapter, what do we see? In the next chapter, it's the slaughter of the idolaters. This is still part of the same prophecy. It doesn't say on this such and such date. This is just a artificial chapter skip here, artificial chapter break. It's not a different prophecy. And then he led me, the slaughter of the idolaters happened. And what's going on before the slaughter of the idolaters happened? And he cried also in my ears with a loud voice, saying, cause them that have charge over the city to draw near, every man with his destroying weapon in his hand. And behold, 6 men came from the way of the higher gate, which lieth toward the north, and every man a slaughter weapon in his hand. and one man among them was clothed with linen, with a writer's inkhorn by his side. And they went in and stood beside the brazen altar. And the glory of the Elohim of Israel was gone up from the cherub whereupon he was to the threshold of the house. So I assume right here is the threshold of the house where Yahweh is, and he's called the man with the inkhorn to come to him here. Because judgment begins at the house of Elohim. And he called to the man clothed with linen, which had the writer's inkhorn by his side. And Yahweh saith unto him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark, a tav, upon the foreheads of the men that sigh, that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. So Yahweh is now by the threshold of the house where these 25 men were. So this is the threshold of the house. He's right over here. And he calls for the man with the clothed in linen with the writer's inkhorn by his side to go put the tav on their forehead, for those that sigh and cry for the abominations that be done in the midst thereof, the midst of Jerusalem. So these are the ones that love the truth, that know what's going on, that are aware of it, or not okay with it. They get the tav on their foreheads. And that's something, because the tav sign is also like what Constantine saw, but Constantine was a pagan. And don't you know that Ha-Satan, the adversary, he's going to copy and mimic and imitate the truth? So when Constantine saw the cross in the sky, he was seeing this Tav sign, the spring equinox, except he understood it falsely according to his paganism religion. Nothing new under the sun. And he likely took Mithra worship, and now then just covered it with Christianity. And we have pagan Christianism, that's all Catholicism and Christianity is. The worship of the sun. Okay, here's a YouTube search for Roman Catholic song Lucifer. These are 3 parts right here. This one you can see some captioning right here, and this one you can see some captioning. His flame dawning his own creation. That's how it starts. Then it says, O Lucifer, who will never set. So basically, we know the sun never sets. It just goes around the earth in a circle on his circuit. And so what you have here, it's saying that his flame dawning his own creation. They're creating the sun with the creator. And we know that's not true. Rather, this is Mithraism, true Mithraism. The Roman Catholics at the priest level know that they are worshiping the sun. This is Mithra worship. That's why you see the sun obelisk there at the Vatican. That's why they're singing to Lucifer, making him equal with the sun, the flame of the sun, dawning his own creation. O Lucifer, who will never set. The sun never sets, guys. It just goes around the earth, okay? So that's what they're getting here. This is true blown out Mithra worship in the Vatican, and it goes all the way back to what happened in the temple during Ezekiel's time and the vision that he saw. No pun intended, there's nothing new under the sun. Pun intended. Just like the 25 priests, they had their back turned, not worshiping Yahweh, but they were worshiping the sun. And that's what happened there. And he said to the others, he said in mine hearing, Go ye after him through the city and smite, and let not your eyes spare, neither have ye pity. Slay utterly old and young, both maids and the little children and women, but come not near upon any man whom is the mark, who has the tav, and begin at my sanctuary. Now, who's at the door of the sanctuary right where Yahweh is standing with the man in the inkhorn came? The 25 men in Ezekiel chapter 8 who had their backs toward the temple worshiping the rising sun on the day of the spring equinox. Mithra worship. In Ezekiel chapter 8, they were weeping for Tammuz. So this is all paganism. They get it first. So judgment begins at the house of Elohim. Then they began at the ancient men, which were before the house, the 25 men. And he said unto them, defile the house and fill the courts with the slain. Go ye forth. And they went forth and slew into the city. So the man with the inkhorn and the other 6 men or other 5 men, yeah, the other 5 men. So there were 6 men, and then one of the men among them was clothed in linen. 6 men came, and 1 man among them was clothed in linen. So 1 plus the 5 other men. They began at the sanctuary, and then they began at the ancient men which were before the house. And he said unto them, defile the house, and fill the courts with the slain. So they had to have killed the men with their back towards the temple, the 25 men with their backs towards the temple, because they had to defile the house and fill the courts with the slain. So they killed those 25 men that had their back towards the temple. Go ye forth, and they went forth and slew in the city. And they went forth and slew in the city, and it came to pass, while they were slaying them, and I was left, Ezekiel was left, that I, Ezekiel, fell upon my face and cried and said, Ah, Yahweh Elohim, wilt thou destroy all the residue of Israel in thy pouring out of thy fury upon Jerusalem? Then said he, Yahweh Elohim, unto Ezekiel, the iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great, and the land is full of blood, and the city full of perverseness. For they say, Yahweh hath forsaken the earth, and Yahweh seeth not. And as for me also, my eye shall not spare, neither will I have pity, but I will recompense their way upon their head. And behold, a man clothed with linen, which had the inkhorn by his side, reported the matter, saying, I have done as thou hast commanded me. Now, the judgment first, before Yahweh judges the world, it has to start at the house of Elohim. It has to start with those who are professing Israelites, those who are professing Christians, those who profess to be Kohanim, or Cohen priests, or Levite priests. Those who say they will be judged first, whether they are true or false. Then it's the judgment of the world, and that recompense, the year of recompense in Isaiah is likely the year of recompenses for the earth, because in that year of recompense, Yahweh will later show mercy to Judah and Israel. So that's something to consider. So this event might happen before the year of Jubilee, is what I'm trying to say. And behold, a man clothed with linen, which had the inkhorn by his side, reported the matter, saying, I have done as thou hast commanded me. So in that line, in them, okay, in the ecliptic plane, in that ecliptic line, has he set a tabernacle for the sun. That tabernacle is the day of the spring equinox, when the celestial equator and the ecliptic cross each other, and that where they cross is the spring equinox. The sun is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, which is the spring equinox. So on the first day of the first month, which is the day after the spring equinox, the sun is no longer shining directly into the chamber. It's now come out of the chamber because it's the day after the spring equinox. And rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. The race is the 364-day calendar. He's a strong man, not by how much weight he can lift, but by the fact that he can run this race over and over and over again, year after year after year after year, Shaneh after Shaneh after Shaneh after Shaneh. He runs that race, the 364-day calendar year race, over and over again. That's why he's a strong man. It's all about endurance. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, the summer and winter solstices, and the northern and southern tropics. Okay, so it goes from equinox to the northern tropic, and then back to the equinox, celestial equinox, and down to the southern tropic, and back up to the celestial equator. And his circuit, his takufa, what I just explained to you, is a circuit, okay, unto the ends of it. And there's nothing hid from the heat thereof, speaking of the sun. All right, and there's 4 takufas in a year. On the first day of the first month, according to one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, is a takufa. On the first day of the 4th month, a takufa. On the first day of the 7th month, Tekufa, on the first day of the 10th month, Tekufa. I have a whole video on the Dead Sea Scrolls explaining to you the Tekufa. Watch the video. So there you have it. Hello, Yah. This is explaining how the sun shines into the tabernacle, tent, and temple on the day of the spring equinox and comes out on the following day, which is day 1 of 364. Only one day can do that. That means the process of elimination, only one day can he shine into those locations because they're 90 degrees due east, okay, facing 90 degrees due east. And then he comes out to run the race, and the race is the 364-day cycle. So day 1, when he's in the tabernacle, in the tent, in the tabernacle, in the tent, and in the temple, it's not part of the 364-day calendar. That's the day that's out of time. That's not the day that's part of the 364-day year, Shaneh. Rather, it's the 365th day of the solar cycle. A solar cycle, 365 solar days, a 365-day solar cycle does not equal 364-day calendar. This is a slide from that video. The sun is shining east into the temple. The 25 men should have had their backs to the rising sun and should have been looking at the illuminated temple where Yahweh dwells, looking at the pillars Jacob and Boaz lit up, looking at the door looking inside the sanctuary. More than likely, the door would have been open. That's what they should have been doing. For this year, this is why I picked March 20th, 2024 as the day of the spring equinox, because not only is it intersected by 90 degrees azimuth, when the sun rises on the horizon, it's also intersected by the celestial equator. And even when it sets that day, it's still barely intersected by the celestial equator. It's not intersected by 270.00 degrees. But this likely, because the sun is on the celestial equator, somehow the sun is shining straight. Remember, light bends. It does this weird thing. But for some reason, when it's on the celestial equator, likely the light is straight. That's why we get that straight sign. So it doesn't not necessarily has to do with it rising 90 degrees due east, possibly. But rising 90 degrees due east does help with it. Or maybe it does, making a straight line shadow. But right here, because it's rising 90 degrees due east, it's shining directly into the temple, tabernacle, and tent. So therefore, we know that the sun is in the temple, in the tent, in the tabernacle that day. He comes out the following day as a strong man to run the race. So the following day right here is not going to have a direct sunlight path into the back of the temple or wherever it was. Some light's going to shine in, but it's not going to be perfect and it won't reach the back lit up. So again, the sun shines into the temple, the tabernacle, the tent. And here it is on that same day, just a little bit later. And as you can see, this a little bit later is when the sun is intersected. Okay, it's still basically on the horizon. It's just like 1 or 2 minutes, like 1.5 minutes after. So 5:45 a.m., 5:46 a.m. It's a little bit risen above the horizon, just barely. Probably wouldn't even be able to tell with the naked eye. But at this moment, it's now dissected into 2 equal pieces here at 90 degrees. So that's something to consider while it's being intersected, almost dissected by the celestial equator. So here I am in Stellarium. I'm in Fairbanks, Alaska. This is way, way north where they get like 24 hours of darkness and sometimes 24 hours of sun. And right here, I want to show you that even on March 19th at sunrise, it appears that they're going to get 90 degrees azimuth on the sun on the horizon, intersected by 90 degrees azimuth, and also intersected by the celestial equator while it's on the horizon here, while the sun is on the ecliptic. So this day, the sun is going to start transiting the celestial equator while it's on the ecliptic plane and coming this way. So this 90 degrees, rising 90 degrees due east, it appears that it happens almost everywhere. At least it's happening here on this day in Fairbanks, Alaska. That's pretty high north. I don't know if it's going to do it even higher north, but it appears like that. It's something to look into. Again, I talked about it being a Tav. The original letter Tav of the pictograph hieroglyphic Hebrew almost looked to be a upright cross with 90-degree angles. Okay, it looks at some time of the middle period of the transition of the letter, it became sideways, just like you just saw. So it went from here to here, and that's actually an accurate representation of what the sun's doing. Where you see the ecliptic and the celestial equator intersect, it's actually like a Tav, more on an angle like that. So it's not up and right, it's more like at an angle. So that's actually kind of interesting how that letter evolved. And that's something to consider. Also, I wanted to share from a previous video about the ancient Paleo letter Kuf. The hieroglyphic Hebrew is right here. This is the original hieroglyphic Hebrew. It then later evolved into this and then into this. Sometimes it was like this. And people say that it represented the sun on the horizon. Then it later changed upright, where the line is upright, the sun intersected by 90 degrees azimuth, possibly, question mark. But that's what it meant. If this meant sun on the horizon, then this means that sun is intersected by possibly 90 degrees azimuth. I don't have a full explanation, but that's just, we can put into that. That's just something to consider. Again, sun shines into the temple, into the tabernacle of Moses, into the sanctuary. Yes, Moses was told to erect the temple on the first day of the first month, but he didn't rise up early to do it, okay? And I shared that more than likely the day before he did the floor plans to make sure that everything, and he did the final measurements that the day before to make sure that everything was properly to raise it up on the first day of the first month, not before. On the 365th day, the sun is shining in. On the first day of the first month, the sun is out of the temple, out of the tabernacle, out of the tent of David, running the race. So location for Jerusalem at sunrise March 20th, the sun will shine directly due west into the temple, into the tabernacle, into the tent. The sun at sunrising is intersected by both celestial equator, right here in red, and 90 degrees azimuth in blue. Also, at sunset, it's barely intersected and sets at around 270 degrees, 10. This is 270.20, 270.40. So maybe this is 270.10, this part right here. So it's not directly by 270.00, but it's intersected by 270. And this should be good enough, but you'll get the straight line reading right here because the sun is still being intersected by the celestial equator throughout that day. While this day, it doesn't start off, well, March 19th, it ends intersected by the celestial equator, but it doesn't start the day intersected by the celestial equator. And both for March 21st, it's not intersected at all, sunrise or sunset, by the celestial equator. So now let me go ahead and pull up on Stellarium the spring equinox at 6:05 a.m. on March 20th, what that equinox event is and what that looks like. And let me go ahead and look at that in Stellarium, and so we can find out for ourselves what this time is at 5:06 a.m. This moment of the spring equinox is when the celestial equator perfectly bisects the sun into two equal pieces. It's directly bisecting the sun into two different pieces, into two different equal pieces. So that's what you're going to see at that event. And that event happens everywhere at the same moment on Earth. But because you're in different time zones, it happens at a different time on your clock. And this is zoomed in on March 20th, 2024 from Jerusalem at 5:06 a.m. And this is when NASA's equinox moment is when the sun is bisected into two equal pieces by the celestial equator. So the sun travels along the ecliptic And when the sun is bisected in half into two equal pieces, half on this side, half on that side, that is the quote-unquote equinox moment that you'll see like in timeanddate.com. And I want to be clear that the NASA equinox moment is not our sign. It just happens to be where the sun is. The sign takes almost like a full day possibly. It's the straight line sign. The sun has to be shining due east. So likely on this day when the sun is somewhat intersected, doesn't have to be bisected, but intersected by the celestial equator, I think the correct term is transiting the celestial equator, transiting it. That is the day of the sign, when the sun transits it. And it takes a little bit more than a whole day for it to transit it. So you're going to see some pictures that I took where the sun starts off being intersected by this equator like just a little bit here. And then the following day, it's a little bit left of it is left. So that's an interesting. So now that we went over the equinox event, Equinox 2024, where's it going to be? In my video, I said it was going to be like this, but I could be mistaken looking at this information. It doesn't take much to do an equinox test. There's a lot of people doing it now. There's a lot of information on YouTube how to do it. In my last video, I said this is a superficial date line. It's still there. I asked if the year begins here. I put question marks. I thought that it was going to happen March 19th here and March 20th for all of here, but I could be now mistaken, as the data looks like possibly the international date line might move where it's right here for this year 2024 to 2025. Here, which means the whole Earth is going to, if this is the beginning of the day and the beginning of the real international date line for this coming year, because the international date line, it rotates to a new position every year. That means the entire Earth might be getting March 20th as the day of the spring equinox. So watch and look at the data and decide for yourself. Hopefully we'll get some people making some equinox readings. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that data and then discuss and let you make your own conclusions. So here is the March 19th equinox event for North America. For New York City, the March equinox, the vernal equinox in New York City is at 23:06 on Tuesday, March 19th. All right. For Los Angeles, it's also on Tuesday, March 19th, but at 20:06. Okay. So do you see how, because there's a 3-hour difference between the Eastern time and Pacific time, that's what you see here. That's why the same event, when the sun is going to be intersected by the celestial equator, it happens in Jerusalem at 5:06 a.m. So 6 hours ahead of New York time is Jerusalem. And Jerusalem's time of 5:06 a.m. on March 20th, that moment is equivalent to 11:06 p.m. on March 19th in New York City, and at 8:06 p.m. on March 19th in Los Angeles. So here's New York City, and as you can see, here's the celestial equator on March 19th. It's right up against it, while on March 20th, the celestial equator is going through the sun. So that's going to be a tough call on when you guys are going to get your equinox straight line reading for those who are on the east coast of the USA. My guess is that New York City might get the equinox reading on March 19th. The straight line might begin here. The sun's 90 degrees east. It's barely here, right up against the celestial equator. So throughout that whole day, it's going to begin the transit of going through the celestial equator. So this might be the day of the equinox. Here you can see it's still transiting the celestial equator. The transition of the celestial equator, as you see, it takes more than a full day for the sun to transit it. Here is March 19th in the morning, and here's March 20th in the morning. The hours, for whatever reason, is still on the UCT time, but this is sunrise, New York City, here, and so it takes more than a full day for the sun to transit the equator. So is the day of the equinox here? Is that going to be the day of the straight line, or is the day of the straight line on this day, March 20th for New York City? That's what the people have to find out. And this is at sunrise, and it's important to note that that equinox event, when the sun is bisected by the celestial equator, that's going to happen at 11:06 p.m. New York City time on this day. So this is the daytime part of it, then you have the nighttime. So is it going to happen then? Or are they supposed to get the leap day this year, and that this is the day of the spring equinox when the sun is risen, being intersected by the celestial equator? So the question is the Americas, are the Americas going to be at the head right here of the international date line, and you guys are going to get on the 19th? The sun is moving clockwise. It comes to the fictitious international date line. It turns over to March 20th. Then Oceania gets it on March 20th. Asia, West Asia, Africa, and Europe. And is that going to happen? Is that how it's going to happen? So is the Americas going to get the reading this year? This is why you need to find people who are keeping the sundial when they get the straight line. So here is Los Angeles, and as you can see at sunrise on March 19th, 2024, by the time the sun gets to Los Angeles from New York, now a little bit of the sun is being intersected by the celestial equator. And then on March 20th, as you can see, here you can see that a little bit is left of the sun that's by the celestial equator. But on March 19th, it's at 90 degrees azimuth. March 20th, it's not 90 degrees azimuth. It's already past that. So here it's intersected by 90 degrees azimuth. Here the sun is already past 90 degrees azimuth. So that's something to consider. So is California, is the Americas going to get their equinox reading right here on March 19th? Here is Honolulu, Hawaii. And Honolulu, Hawaii is at the end of the fictitious time zone. And March 19th in Honolulu, Hawaii, the sun has even moved even more into this celestial equator from Los Angeles. And on March 19th, when the sun rises on the horizon, it's intersected by 90 degrees azimuth. But March 20th, the sun is still intersected by the celestial equator just a little bit, but it's no longer being intersected by 90 degrees azimuth. So this is why, is Hawaii going to get their straight line reading on March 19th? Now here's Auckland, New Zealand. As we continue to circumnavigate the Earth, we're coming from Hawaii to Auckland, New Zealand, but now we're below the celestial equator. So the sun's movement across the celestial equator seems to be inverted. So on March 19th, here you can see the sun is still in just a little bit more from Hawaii, what Hawaii showed, even though it's inverted. However, the creation does that. And then you can see it's not intersected by 90 degrees. But here on March 20th, there's a little bit left. The sun is almost completely transited the celestial equator, and it is intersected by 90 degrees azimuth. So that is the question. Is Auckland, New Zealand going to get it on the 20th and the Americas on the 19th? That is, here's Eastern Australia. This is Sydney. And as you can see on March 19th, the sun has transited more of the celestial equator by the time that the sun rises on the east coast of Australia. It's not intersected by 90 degrees azimuth. But here on the March 20th, the sun has transited the celestial equator by sunrise. It's no longer being intersected by the celestial equator, but it is intersecting 90 degrees azimuth. So when is Sydney, Australia going to get it? And here is Perth, Australia, the Western Australia. And as you can see on the 19th, something is up here maybe with the UTC time on it. Here's the 19th, here's the 20th, here's the 21st. Now, mind you, this is the fall equinox because they are below the equator. But it looks like Perth, it looks like Australia is going to be getting it on 320. This is what I would suspect to be the day of the equinox reading. So, as I suspect, it looks like Americas are going to get it on the 19th. Same thing with Hawaii. Then it goes through the artificial time zone there, and then the international date line is going to change to the 20th, and then that's what is Auckland, New Zealand's going to get it on the 20th, and it looks like Australia is going to get it on the 20th, Asia on the 20th, West Asia on the 20th, Africa and Europe on the 20th. So it looks like America might be at the head of the international time zone this year. We'll have to see how the tests are going to be sharing the data this year. We'll see. We'll know when people do the straight line test this year. There's several people that I know that are over in Australia. I believe Brother Richard Meehan is there. Also, Brother Alan Rake is there. So there's some brothers over there that are watching this. Also, Brother Damien Niyara, he's watching this calendar. So there, you can look in the comment sections and see what they say after I post this video. Also, this Facebook group called Solar Tracking Observations is ran by Nathan. Is pretty good. You can check this out. Now, please know that this is not an endorsement to the calendars that are posted in this Facebook group. There's several groups in here that have false calendars. The Covenant Calendar Club and also the Remnant of the Light Calendar. They're false calendars, but they will post pretty good data, so you can check out the data and what's being said about there. Nathan has people from all over the earth posting data on this. Also, you can come to the Facebook group that I run called the Official Enoch Calendar Facebook. I will be creating a new Facebook group, but you could come here because there's some members in this group that do post on their equinox readings. Brother Thomas Patnode is very reliable and has a great equinox readings in the past. So this is something to consider. You want to get involved. You want to know what's going on. I suggest that you check these out to be up to date on when it is. Look at the discussion. Take a look at what people are going to be saying, and I'll even go back and look at my previous years on how I had the equinox day. So I'm signing off, and I hope that you're blessed by the information in this video. I know that it's not conclusive on when the Northern America is going to get it. My guess is it's going to be the 19th now that I looked at the data, but it could be on the 20th. That's why you have to have someone take the straight line test. So I hope that you're blessed by the information, brothers and sisters, in this video. Look forward to the discussion in the comments section and also in the Facebook groups. And I'm signing off, and shalom to all my brothers and sisters out there. Messiah Yeshua have his testimony and guard his commandments.